Well, guten Tag, good morning, buongiorno, in many languages today, bonjour,
Bonjour.
buenas tardes. I am Fred Plotkin. This is Fred Plotkin on Fridays, the show presented by Idagio, the place where classical music happens. As you know, Idagio is a video and streaming platform dedicated to supporting artists and to making classical music and opera available to fans all around the world. I am Fred Plotkin, and as you know, if you followed this program for about a year and a half, I like to invite guests who inspire me. And some of them are people I know personally very well. Some of them, such as today's guest, I've been with twice, but who I've admired for a very, very long time, and others I've never met. Today's guest, and I'm going to use the French pronunciation, and if you tell me to do otherwise, I shall, is Dominique Meyer. He is currently the sovrintendente, the head of the Teatro alla Scala in Milan. Dominique is, I think, unique in the opera world in that he has been at the top of three of the most important historic opera houses ever, the Teatro alla Scala, the Wiener Staatsoper in Vienna, and the Opera de Paris. He is born in a town that I'd like to ask you about. I think it's pronounced Tann. Is it Tann?
Perfect. Tann.
So Tann is in the area where the Rhine River flows between Germany, France, and into Switzerland, and maybe Luxembourg too, I don't know. And this, I think, really makes you, without a euphemism, a European.
Yes, I was never proud to be born in France. I was just born in France, but at 20 kilometers from two borders, I could have been Swiss or German, and I feel well where one plays music, and so I was perfectly happy in Paris for such a long time because I was at the Paris Opera, but also at the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées. It is a great venue, high level. And I was very happy in Vienna for 10 years now. I'm completely happy in Milano. I think, of course, it is not like in the States. In Europe, if you want to work in different countries, you have to speak different languages. But that's what I like, to deal with different languages, and that means with different cultures.
I'm interested in many things, but the fact that you're having been born basically at the juncture of three countries, I've spent a great deal of my life in the Italian region of Friuli Venezia Giulia, which borders Austria and Slovenia. Exactly. And they also say that it is a combination Latin, Slavic, and Germanic. That's a little too simplistic, but they use the term there, senza frontiere, without frontiers, without borders, because in my view, and I would imagine your view, there may be political borders, there may be natural borders such as a river, but mentally, socially, spiritually, maybe linguistically, we don't have to have as many borders, and culture and relations can continue.
I completely agree with you, because I remember when I was a little boy, my parents used to live in Germany, but at 10 kilometers from the border on the other side. So I took my bicycle to go to buy some French bread. It was a natural thing, and of course there was a border at that time. And I remember on Friday evening we went to my grandparents with my parents. And from time to time, the time that we spent at the border was longer than the trip.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And that's the reason why my generation was so happy to see that there was some progress when it was decided that we had to create the European Union, and to be able to go to buy your bread without to stay 1 hour at the border. So
you and I are of the same generation. We were born a few months apart.
Yes.
You had your birthday in August, mine is in May. And So therefore, we experience many of the same things.
Exactly.
I was born in America, but I came to Europe when I was 17, and I did most of my opera work in Italy, but also in Austria was another country I worked in a lot, not so much Vienna as Salzburg, but also Berlin and France and most of the countries. And I felt that it was indispensable for me to come to Europe as a very young man to learn the languages, to learn also the history. Although my work was opera, my major in school was history, because I felt that to understand what the Italians call the dietrologia, what comes behind the ideas and the passions and the politics of these operas, I had to know that as much as I had to know the actual music and the composers. You grew up in an environment, as you said, that was near 3 countries. Basel, I think, was a major city nearby. Where did you first encounter opera?
In Paris.
So later,
there was no music in my family, and my father was a military, he was a soldier, and so for a long time we were in the south of France, in a little town, Nîmes, beautiful, but
Roman. It's a great Roman city.
Exactly.
Yeah,
a big arena. It's a beautiful place, but I must say I was more interested for sports that time than for culture. And then when I was 17, we went to Paris, and I had a very nice brother. He died last year. Last year, he was my best friend, and we decided together to discover everything what Paris could provide. So, and one day we went to the opera. So, and it was the beginning of a big fire, a big passion. And I like this story because it gave me a few strong ideas about how you should start with opera, and also the way that we run operas and the way that we speak about operas. And because the first opera that I saw was Parsifal, which is a well-known opera for beginners, as you know. But I was fascinated. I had a very bad ticket at the Palais Garnier, 4th floor. I couldn't see more than 2 meters of the stage, but I had the nose literally in the pit. And I remember at the end of the show, I had 4 notes in my head. And I was looking for the 5th, and I couldn't find it. Mm-hmm. And of course, today, this is stupid because with your handy, you can find it. But that time it was not so easy. And I have the impression that I was born in the Middle Age, but it is like that. The only way to listen to that opera and to find this 5th note was to buy records. But for a student, it was not possible because Parsifal, 5 records, huge amount of money. I was not rich, so I couldn't buy that. And it was the last performance. So I thought, good, I can't listen to Parsifal again, but I will go to the next opera. Next was Figaro. And that was really a key for me because it was the wonderful production by Giorgio Strehla. It was the great classical of the Paris Opera in the 70s. And I saw it 57 times. Mm-hmm. Always a little part because, I could only buy seats in the stalls, but behind, so I could see only in part. So finally, I could see the global image, mm-hmm. visiting all the stalls, in the circle. And so I have a long story with that opera. And later on, when I was at the Paris Opera, I did a revival. And now, last June, because Giorgio Strehla would have been 100 years old, we performed that production again. So then, after having seen this Figaro, it was my passion. So not only opera, but also concerts. We went. It was easy to go that time because opera, okay, many times was sold out, but we could buy those cheap tickets one day before the performance. So and concerts was really easy because most of the concerts were empty that time. I
Why
saw
why were
wonderful.
they empty?
No, because nobody was interested in that, so people thought it was not interesting to go. I remember I saw the greatest pianist of the world that time, but Rudolf Serkin, for instance, the Passion, Claudio Arrao, Maurizio Pollini, all these guys. It was easy to find tickets for great symphonic orchestra. The only symphonic concerts that were sold out were the two Berliner Philharmoniker Carré in June every year. That was all. But I've seen so many beautiful concerts almost alone. So
Yeah.
there was no passion for classical music that time in Paris. So it was easy to make this little passeggiata in the music world.
I don't know if you know that I was Giorgio Strehler's assistant at La Scala in the 1970s. And so worked on that Le Nozze di Figaro production. And I will send you a program that I did with a colleague on August 13th of this year, the day before the Strehler centennial, in which we commemorated Strehler's contributions. So
great pleasure.
He to me is the model of the regisseur, the stage director for opera.
I knew him very well.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened to me a disaster, because when I was working at the Lausanne Opera, he called me and he said, "Look, I'm doing a new Così fan tutte. Would you like to co-produce it?" Oh, I thought, me, little guy in Lausanne, and Giorgio calling me personally. And the reason why I was sad is that my next new production was Così fan tutte, so it was important for me to say yes. And it was a tragedy, because his phone call was something like a miracle for me. So I was so disappointed to be obliged to say no to Giorgio. And then finally he died by doing this production after a few days.
In my experience of him, and I want to focus on you today, not Giorgio, but one thing particular about him was that as he got older, he spoke faster. And I always felt that he was in a hurry, and they had a lot that he had to say and do. When he was younger, based on the videos I've seen, he spoke more slowly, like an actor. Later in life, the mind moved and the mouth moved. It was very particular.
I can tell you a little story, because I remember when, it was very close to my culture minister when I was working at the ministry, Jacques Lang. They were very close together because they had worked together. And one day I came to my office at 8 o'clock in the morning. There were only the people that cleaned the floors, and I hear a big noise in the office of the minister. And I go, and because that was not usual. And the minister came always about around 9 o'clock. So it was completely strange. I went there, opened the doors, and I see Giorgio Strehler alone, walking, making big gestures. And at a certain moment, he sees me and he says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm working here. I should ask you, what are you doing in the office of the minister?" And he said, "But I have a meeting with Jack. Don't you see that I am rehearsing?" That's so funny.
In preparing for today's conversation, there were so many things that came to me, but really one of the first ones is the fact that you have worked in the three, I would call them titanic, iconic opera houses of Europe, namely Opera de Paris, the Wiener Staatsoper, and Teatro La Scala. These are the three countries with among the biggest operatic traditions. These are three cities that have been the center of the opera world at different times. These are three cities that think of themselves as the epicenter of opera. these are three cities that are friendly rivals in terms of being the best. And I don't use the word best about which one is better than the other.
Agree with you.
The passion for excellence, but sometimes the national characteristics of France, Austria, and Italy get in the way of that excellence. And my question for you is not any of those things, but you have had to navigate from the French structure, mindset, I will call it rationality, to the Austrian structure, mindset, bureaucracy, to the Italian structure, mindset, estro, spontaneity, of sometimes having to suddenly create out of nothing, you did the Opera Italiana in Algeria, where the first act ends in confusion and confusion, but suddenly out of that confusion comes something beautiful. How have you adapted, or how have you tried to change these cultures to make the theaters work well?
First of all, you don't have to change the culture. You need to respect the culture, because I think a great opera house with so deep roots, they have a personality. And if you think that you are stronger than the personality of the opera house that you have to run, I think it's a big mistake. So first you have to I think there is too much arrogance in our business. So I think you have to be dedicated to the houses where you're allowed to work. I was never dreaming to run those opera houses, because I'm not like that. I do not believe I'm the best. I will come and I will show you. This is the opposite. But now, of course, it's funny. What you said is exactly the reality. It's really funny that those three cultures are so different. At the end, you always do Valkyrie or Rosenkavalier or Barbara of Sevilla. That's the funny thing. I have around also the Champs-Élysées and also the opera in Lausanne, which is another thing. If you think, for instance, the Paris Opera and the Vienna Opera are national operas, so with a strong guidance of the state. Here's a foundation in Milano. In Lausanne, it was a city hall. Champs-Élysées is a private society with no subsidies, like in America, nothing coming from the city or the pure public administration. So I think it's just like a game. Just have to respect the place, to understand the rules, because there are very different rules. You spoke about the Austrian bureaucracy, but there is also a strong Italian bureaucracy, and I do not speak about the French one, which is maybe the worst. So complicated, everything. Then you have houses with unions, for instance, here and in Paris, the Paris Opera, very strong unions. Here, I don't know, because I'm here since 1.5 years, but I love them. They are very kind, they were nice, and you can really speak to them. In Vienna, you know how many meetings I had with the unions in 10 years?
No.
Zero. No.
Well, they are Austrian civil servants.
Oh, I love them, because they, of course, they have their problems, but they come with the problem and a different choice of solutions. So and you can discuss, and what I like there is that it's very civilized. That means that none of them wants to win. The French rhetoric of unions, this is a battle, and every party wants to win against the other. I think at the end, it's the house that is losing. I strongly believe in that, and also what's also interesting is that the audience are so different, very different, and also the position of the opera house in the local culture. For instance, in Paris, it's far to be the most important thing. also in the cultural world, as you know, Paris is not a very stable city. There are moments where the speaking theater is on the top. There are moments where the cinema is always at the top. If you open a newspaper on the day where the movies are coming out, they speak only about cinema, only about that. In Vienna, of course, the music is number one. You know, Vienna is a small city, after all. It's a city of 1.8 million inhabitants. But there, with my colleagues, we sold every night 10,000 tickets for classical music. It's huge. The opera is the most important thing that they have. The opera director is like a statue, is more than any minister. Is embarrassing. For me, it was really embarrassing because I love my job, but I liked in Paris to be unknown. In Paris, I had to do one press conference and 2 interviews every year. In Vienna, I should speak every day. At the beginning, I said to my press officer, look, I don't want to speak so much, but he said, oh, they are getting angry if you don't speak because people are reading those news and those interviews, and you have to be very present. So I did. It is not the part that I liked very much, because I like to stay in my theater and work and enjoy the job. But but you have to behave in Vienna like a politician, because they all know you, they follow you. Even if you buy your sausage, they say, no, Herr Director, it's not that one, take the other one. So,
well, you know very well that behind the Opera House, there's the Sacher, but there's also the Bitzinger Käsekrein sausage stand, which is known as the Kleine Sacher. And if I wanted information about what was happening in Vienna in music, I would go there, not to the Sacher.
For sure. Yeah. Then Milano is a different thing, because first, I didn't know that before, but La Scala is in the ranking of the brands is the number 2. The first brand in Italy is Ferrari, and the second is La Scala. Yeah. It's impressive. But what these operas have in common is that the structure of the audience is almost the same. You have 70% locals and 30% of people coming from abroad. I don't like the word tourist, because in those houses, people come just to see operas or ballets. They come from Paris, they come from Munich, they come from Frankfurt, they come from Zurich, or they go to Vienna or to Paris or to Milano, because on purpose they want to see opera. They want to enjoy that. I think this is the main common thing. Then, if you go deeper into the analysis of the audience, is slightly different, because what I liked in Vienna is that we sold every night 580 standing rooms for very cheap prices. It was 3 and 4 euros. So that means that everyone can do that. There is no excuse. If you really want to go, you can. Of course, you have to stand in the file for a long time, many times. But you can see, you have the half of these tickets have a very good view and very good acoustic. So you see everything, and it costs 4 euros. And for that, you can see Mr. Kaufmann or Miss Netrebko, like people that are sitting. And I remember that was a very good audience, because very mixed. You had poor people, you had students, you had rich people, you had Viennese, you had foreigners. It was everything mixed, and I thought it was. This is the key. This is the reason why opera is still a big deal in Vienna, because everyone can go.
I have a question about the standing room in Vienna.
Yeah.
I was living in Italy. My first visit to Vienna was in April of 1976. to attend performances, and I had to form the queue like everyone else. And at that time, the tradition was that you wore a scarf, and that at the moment that you got your place, you tied your scarf there. Do they still do that?
Still like that, yes, yes. And they have their favorite positions, you know, in the angle, because you have the wall behind, it's a bit more comfortable. But I remember when I came there, I was looking for a French newspaper. I didn't have the tablet at that time. And I saw somebody while I was buying my newspaper, and this guy, not very young, with a suit, tie, very elegant. And he said, "Oh, you're the new opera director." I said, "Yes." And he said, "Look, I go to the standing room since the opening of that house in the year 55, 3 times a week." And it was obvious that that he had a good job, he had money. But he said, "Look, can you imagine if I would have been sitting, I would have been bankrupt." 3 times 200 euros every week since 1955. It's a lot of money. So I like this, because he was not ashamed to go there. He was happy to go, and many people are like that. Here in Milano is different, because first there is a thing that I've changed. I noticed that half of the tickets are sold, or we try to sell them at the highest price. 1,000 tickets in first category. I think this is too much, simply because I'm against this tendency to make every year more money than the year before, because at the end, of course, you can sell the tickets, but you push so many opera lovers away, or you give them only bad tickets with bad view, many times also bad acoustics. So I think we should think about this question of the price, because I don't see what is the victory if we push real music and opera lover away from these halls. I'm completely against that.
Of the 3 theaters, I would say that Vienna and Milan more than Paris, but correct me if you think I'm wrong. The audiences have a sense of ownership and proprietary feeling for their theaters.
I agree with you. Yes, they behave like owners, and in a way, it's just like when I was named in Vienna, my son was a little boy at that time. He said, "Oh, it's just like to be trainer of a big football team. Everyone will criticize you, and everyone will think I would be better than him." So, but I like it, because it's an expression of a certain passion. And of course, there are some differences, because here in Milano, the main repertoire is Italian, of course. In Vienna, it's completely different, because when I came there, I thought I studied, of course, the repertoire, but I didn't really. You don't really know before to work concretely there, and I thought it's going to be the place to do Wagner, Strauss. Of course, I did Wagner and Strauss with the Vienna Philharmonics. It was my greatest pleasure, but 60% of the repertoire is Italian, as you know, because from time to time, it's more difficult to sell the tickets for a good Strauss opera than for Elisia d'Amore. This is the situation. And of course, both of them in Milano and in Vienna, they have the tendency to consider that the grass was greener in the past. And they can be difficult for newcomers. Then they adopt them. So that's the reason why I made a little joke, a trick, because at the beginning I thought if a singer is good, he has to sing the main role. Then I saw they said, but you know, the new tenor is not as good than the former, and this Bruns is not as good than Michel Schade. That was a better time, blah, blah, blah. Good. 1 year later, the same singer singing the same role. Oh, he improved a lot. It was the same completely. You can compare the two tapes exactly, but they had a different feeling. So I had another tactic. Then I decided these newcomers to sing smaller roles and to cover the main role. And this works very well because if the main role has to cancel, this guy comes, saves the show, and he's the king. So you know, in my job, you have to deal with this thing. So it's also a good game.
Well, this concept of ownership is also a sense of when we fell in love with the art form. So that
I agree.
I fell in love with the art form at a certain time when there were singers like Sutherland and Marilyn Horne and Leonie Rieseneck and so forth, wonderful artists. And when I worked at La Scala in the 70s, people who worked there who were of an older generation or members of the audience all said, well, this is okay now, but it's non sono gli anni 50, it's not the 1950s, where you had Vittorio Gui and Tullio Serafin and Maria Callas and Visconti and so on. And I said, yes, but we have Claudio Abbado, Giorgio Strehler, Mirella Freni, Shirley Verrett, Piero Cappuccilli, Jose Carreras, I could name all of these people, Domingo Pavarotti, Calbier sang Aida, and so forth. And they said, insomma, it's kind of like, well, they're okay. But now young people who I meet, when I tell them that I got to work with the artist I just named, to them, that's a mythical era. And I try to explain, we have wonderful artists now.
I agree with you.
Wonderful conductors and so forth now.
You know, I think this is because the love for this art form is so deep that people want to revive always the emotions that they had in the past. And this is very strong. But, you know, also because our memory is not as good as we think. For instance, I don't know if you have made the experience, but for instance, you like a record, a CD, for instance. You think this is the best interpretation. So good. And then you go to a concert, you listen to the same piece, you are disappointed because it doesn't fit exactly to the recording that you like. It's not that it's not as good, it's different, but you think it's not as good. So then always this deception. And one day, years after, you take your beloved recording, you play it, and it doesn't fit to the memory that you have. And this is very human because our taste changes, our memory is not so okay. So and we have this nostalgic way to love music. It's in a way it's full of poetry, but it shouldn't close our eyes and our ears, because I think we are spoiled. As you know, Fred, I like to be part of singing contests and to discover new people. And you know, last week I was in Rome to a singing contest. They were excellent singers, you know, excellent singers. And in a way, I think nothing changes. You always have young people that are good. And what I think really enjoyable is that many of these young singers, they were born in very poor families. They had no culture. And that means that we shouldn't reserve opera and classical music just to an elite, which I don't know exactly what it is about. But you know, beautiful flower can come in a part of the world that where the ground is maybe not so positive. No, and one should be open, simply to welcome new people. When I was in Vienna, I was very happy to have a permanent ensemble of singers to run. And of course, if you do that, if you have this opportunity, you can hire new singers and help them to grow up. In my opinion, you don't have to be very intelligent to know very well your job to make a contract with a very well-known singer. You just have to read the good papers, the reviews, and so you know that Miss Netrebko is a very good singer. And but I think it's more interesting to trying to find very good new singers and to help them to grow up. This is a funny job, and I think it was my favorite activity all these years.
There is a particular question that you are the right person to ask. The Paris Opera, the Vienna State Opera, and La Scala all have very strong academies, traditions of education. And I can often spot, and I mean this in a positive way, an artist who had a Paris training as opposed to an artist who had a Vienna training, as opposed to an artist who had a Milan training. And it does not mean that they're French, Austrian, or Italian. I have a friend who's a baritone who trained in the Paris tradition. He's from Italy, from southern Italy. And his stage deportment, his movement, his relationship to theater, to gesture, is unmistakably Paris opera to me. Whereas you look at a wonderful artist like Pretty Yende, who was trained in the La Scala tradition. Yes. And that's a whole other set of resources that she calls upon. And then there are the Vienna trained artists. Did you notice that in your regimes in the three places, now in Milan, and the degree to which, maybe you think I'm wrong and that's fine, but that there are very distinct personalities in the education of the artist?
Yes, you're right. There's a reality. And I think I knew it like a theory before, but now I know it practically. And it has to do with many different things. The way that they rehearse. For instance, in Vienna, they are very fast because, of course, this system of repertoire needs fast people. So you need to learn very fast. You need to do your revival very fast. And in the opposite of what I heard, the level is not cheaper. The level is very high. Even for normal repertoire performance, you can have great performances in Vienna. But of course, it's also a matter of concentration. In Vienna, they are very well concentrated. Not only the singers, but the whole house is a Formula One. They're so fast. And if you see the orchestra, for instance, doing so many operas without rehearsals, and just they follow the conductor so well. They understand what's happening in his head. They can react so fast. This is beautiful to see. Here it's not the same. They need time, and they maybe it has to do with concentration. But at the end, the level is the same. It's very high. Mm-hmm. The way that they prepare singers, you're completely right. It's completely different. I think what is really important if you prepare musically the singers, that your coach are mother language. I think if you are not mother language, it's difficult to go deep into the music and the roles. I think it's almost impossible. For instance, I had in Vienna a great team of pianists. Now the head of this pianist is working as Thomas Lausmann. He's a wonderful guy. He's working in the Metropolitan now. Mm-hmm. He's a wonderful person, and he's so talented. I did many performances with great conductors like Tillemann that can be really tricky. But Lausmann used to prepare the singers for Tillemann in Bayreuth, so it was the best weapon. No mistake, never. So I was completely secure. nothing could happen. Here they are very good also. Of course, they are more centered on the Italian rep. In France, is different. It is different because, as you know, the French repertoire is not as central in the rep of the Paris Opera. They play a little bit, but it's not really so strong. So you need to have people coming from out of different countries if you want to do it very well. But I see also, the voices are different from one country to the other. And also, I told you, I'm part of many singers contests. When I can put the jury together, I try to make a mix always with people coming from the north and people coming from Latin countries, because it is really impressive because they do not judge the singers the same way. So. And as the world, the opera world is very international, I think you need to have the point of view of different people. So if you don't want to be too wrong.
So since you opened that door, I'm going to walk in. I've been on juries for singing competitions, and I find, and this again is from country to country to country, there is a little bit or a lot of a political structure in terms of the approach to how the winners are chosen. And by political, I don't mean Republican, Democrat, left, right, whatever we want to call it. But what I mean is, on some juries I've been on, the leader of the jury will say, we want to find the person who can be cast right now. We want to find a tenor because we're short of tenors. Other times, I was on a jury once in Spain where basically they wanted the very best singer, male, female. It did not matter what they looked like. There was no question about looks. Whereas on other juries I've been on, if the best singer was heavy, she might not have gotten first prize, but second prize. And I've never headed a jury, but I've been on juries, and therefore I take some guidance from the head of the jury, but I also try to focus on my own preferences, which would be the best singer, period, without considerations about can he or she be cast right now. How do you approach that?
I agree with you. It has to be the best singer, but I have the strong feeling that I'm not alone. I guide the juries, but I know roughly people coming out of Latin countries, they want to have the best singer. People coming out of northern country, they want to have maybe the best looking guy or girls. Maybe you have to make some compromises from time to time. I think life is not like that. Your own impression has to win. I think you just need to hear the positions of the colleagues. It happened to me not to be happy with the decision of one jury, even when I was chairman of the jury, because I think once you have made the choice of the members of the jury, you have to respect their opinion. And the competition is only one period, 3, 4 days, 5 days. At the end, I do not forget that I'm an opera director and I'm working also for my opera house. And then, of course, it happened many times that I didn't hire the winner. Also, it happens that you have no role for the winner. But that I hired somebody that was not even in the final. Because, for instance, in Vienna, it happened many times because there we had this ensemble and I permanent singers. So I thought, yeah, this guy is not finished, but maybe working with good coaches, pianists, he can improve. And he's too young, but in a few years, if he works well, maybe he can come at a better level and come into the cast. But I did, and I was very, very happy many times. So it happens also that I respect the opinion, even if it's not my opinion, for the result of the competition. But when it happens that I have to sign a contract, I feel free. So I do not believe that I'm obliged to hire the winner. So.
A completely other question that I think you, more than almost anyone else I can think of, would be the person to ask. I worked at the Metropolitan Opera, and I left in February of 1988. And then I went to work in Rome for a while, and then I moved to Paris in 88, 89, late 88 and 89, because the new the Bastille Opera House was opening. And Paris before that had the old Paris Opera, the Garnier from 1875. And when I was a student in Paris in the 70s, the opera that they presented the most, and I didn't speak much French then, was Relâche. And I didn't know what Relâche was, which very simply was no performance, nothing on.
Exactly.
The old Paris Opera is a magnificent building. It's extraordinary, but it has its limitations scenically and otherwise. Yes. The new Bastille Opera House that opened in a different part of the city and coincided with the bicentennial of the French Revolution is a very different style. It's very modern. It's much criticized. I find the seats uncomfortable, but I find the stage fantastic. And the potential for what can be done on that stage, to me, is there are very few in the world that can rival that.
I agree.
And so for that reason, I remember all the polemics happening in Paris at that time about the old theater, the new theater. I remember that Châtelet was another theater was being considered for renovation. I later came to know the Théâtre of the Champs-Élysées on Avenue Montaigne. You were in the middle of all of this.
Yes.
And all of this ferment, all of this discussion of culture for national identity, for expenditure, because Francois Mitterrand had this dream of that project of the Bastille Opera. Would you talk about Paris at that time and the relation of the old and the new, the traditional, the modern?
Yes, pleasure. First, the reason why one decided to construct Bastille is that Garnier was not able anymore to present so many performances. And you know why? Because Garnier was created in a period at the end of the 19th century when the sets were very simple. So you could, with the painting, were paintings. So you could move the sets very easily and have 7 different operas every week. It was not a problem. But after the Second World War, when one started to construct sets, it was not the same game anymore. Because first of all, the stage of Garnier is huge. It's big, 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 and there is no space around. That means it was very easy to store different productions before, but once one did these constructed sets, it was not possible anymore. So, because even if you sit in the auditorium, even a set that doesn't seem to be too big is like a building of 4 floors. It's big. So that's why the number of performances was reducing so much. Mm-hmm. And it was necessary to construct a new opera. But this is an element that the politicians didn't care about. They did not speak about. It was the classic opera lovers. I do not believe that those politicians who made this battle were interested in opera in any case. They were speaking about, but they were not interested. They were for the tradition, the red velvet and the golden parts of the Palais Garnier, which is naturally clear. I love that opera house. I was born there. I love every centimeter of this, every inch of that opera house. So I know it by heart. But of course, Bastille was not a very happy story at the beginning because, in France, we do always the same mistake. We want to do a big thing, but we don't give the money. And so there is always a lack of 10% or 15% of the costs just to do it properly. Second, Mitterrand did a mistake because he chose the project, and he thought he was an expert, but he was not an expert in architecture. He was just a lover of architects. And when he saw the project was in international competition, and you were not supposed to know who was the author of every project. And and of course, when he made the choice, he thought that project was made by Richard Meyer, great architect, and of course. But this is the stupid way of organizing those projects. He should have said, I want a project by Richard Meyer. But no, they said, no, it's democracy. We do competition. Nobody has to know who's the winner before it's decided. And Mitterrand made a mistake, and he took that guy, Carlos Ott. He was a very young architect. The only thing he had done before was an hospital in Canada. So he was not interested as a man in music, opera. And of course, they did many mistakes. I was the first general manager because 6 months before the opening, Jacques Lang, the minister, sent me to open the house because it was a disaster. And I went there. It was not glorious, but I was sent like a fireman just. And for instance, I discovered that only to control the tickets, you needed 43 guys. Which is absurd because in a well-constructed opera house, you need 4 or 6. Yes. But not 43. So it was completely ridiculous, of course. And there are so many. I discovered also that there was no door from the auditorium to the stage. So
yes, I know.
Because the firemen said no, you can't do that. It's too dangerous. So of course, but how do you do to work? This is not just a monument. This is a tool. You have to work there. So I could make a little change, and now there is a stupid door just to go from the auditorium to the stage. Really tricky. Of course, the political discussion was tradition against modernity, but in reality, it shouldn't have been this discussion. But there was a positive side of that discussion. Because, of course, Mitterrand was left. He had decided to do the new opera. Chirac was the mayor of Paris that time. He was against. So right were against. He was for tradition, red velvet and golden theaters. And finally, because Chirac wanted to battle against the new opera house, he reopened the Châtelet and he gave more money to Stéphane Lissner, the new director there. So started the competition between the city, Châtelet, and the state, Opéra Bastille. At the end, it was good because there was much more attention for opera. Then I remember I was named at the Champs-Élysées, which is also a great venue, 2,000 seats there. And I must say I enjoyed that period because Hugues Gall was running the Paris Opera. He was a very good opera director. Jean-Pierre Brossman was leading the Châtelet. He was a very good opera director. And every year we had a meeting to discuss about the projects in order not to have the same date for an opening night, in order to have different operas, not always the same, not twice the same opera in the same season. And I think so we could offer, I think, the best repertoire of the world, because it was from Monteverdi until contemporary music, really everything. For the Champs-Élysées, I didn't have so much money, so I thought I do not want to compete with the two others by doing heavy 19th century repertory. So I did only Baroque, but that time with great conductors, William Christie and Christophe Rousset, and I gave the baton for the first time to Emmanuel Haïm, who was young at that time, and Mark Minkowski, all these guys. So and so we could add something to the musical life, and it was not against. It was more, and we had a very good atmosphere. And I remember when I was presenting the season. That time there was a nice bar across the street, and after doing my press conference, I went there, and I saw my customers with the three programs, opera and Châtelet and Champs-Élysées with the calendars, and they were doing their abonnements, their subscriptions. Was really nice, because we strongly had the impression that we were working together to offer more and more interesting projects to Paris people. So many times, the politician, they have an idea, but it can turn completely differently. I was happy with that.
There, to me, one of the wonders of Paris, among many, is not just the food and all the obvious things, but the fact that unlike Vienna and Milan, where there is one dominant theater, in Paris, there are all of these theaters doing work, as you said. And when I lived there, and when I go back there, there was a publication that's changed names. It was called Pariscope.
Pariscope, yes.
That you would get, I think, on Wednesday or Thursday. And I would go to the kiosk, to the newsstand, and the ink was still wet on the magazine. And it was less than €1. And I would look at the count. I would circle everything, including cinema, because Paris has all the wonderful little cinemas.
Yeah, there were 500 screens.
Yeah, and map my cultural week. On that night, I'd sit at a cafe at midnight and plan what I was doing for the next week.
Yeah, that was a great period. I enjoyed much that period, because later on we opened the Opéra Comique also with a different personality, and there was also there something more. I think it was a great period.
Yeah. So I am mindful of time. I suppose I would have many questions. I'm going to ask two. One of them is, I met you in New York a while ago when you were presenting the Vienna State Opera's approach, let's call it, to streaming.
Yes.
Which was different from the Met's Live in HD. And I'm not judging one or the other, but they were different.
No.
And you mentioned earlier in this conversation that you have a tablet. And I know that you have become aware of the way a lot of people receive their opera and their arts, even before a pandemic.
Exactly.
And it's been compounded with the pandemic. But talk briefly about how you arrived at the decisions you made about the approach to streaming of opera, first in Vienna, now Milan.
I remember I was thinking about the future of recordings, CDs, DVDs, and also, and I saw that the market was going down and down and down. And I thought, of course, for a while, the labels were very important, also the TV channels. The labels, because first there were companies able to finance the whole production, and they could print the plastic CDs and store them and send them everywhere. But now nobody wanted to buy those things anymore. Me, yes, and you maybe.
Me too, yes.
we are the only guys to be interested in this plastic slide. And then I thought, when you consider a CD or DVD, the artistic costs are 10% of the price. That means if the material disappears, what is remaining? The 10%. That is really the production. And I thought in Vienna, but it's the same here. I will do the same here. What are we doing? We have 900 workers just to organize shows. And I thought maybe if you study very well, we find 10 people to make that production ourselves. Because we don't need the labels anymore, because they are only good because they can do advertising, plastic, commercial, etc. I thought now it is time to do it ourselves. First point. Second point, there was an impression. So the second, then I went to Vienna. I remember it was one of the first meetings I had made when I was named there 3 years before I started really. And but it was not ready that time because if you make a technology innovation, if you start a quarter too early, it's very expensive and you do many mistakes. So I had to wait until the costs came down, and I had to wait until I could find somebody to do it. And I needed to find somebody who was a geek, a guy who's always in the catalogs and tries to find every new system. And second, I didn't want to teach what is così fan tutte every day to that guy. So I needed to find somebody who was in love with the opera and music. And I found that guy. And so that was in 2012. And so we put the program together, and that time the investment was possible. I could finance everything by sponsoring. And the idea was to go everywhere through internet simply. Nobody was really in Vienna. I had problems with the ministry. They didn't want that to happen, but they didn't say no. That was, in fact, I did it, and I was criticized by them, but it was a great success, and I will always remember a few days before I left Vienna, I had a meeting with the parliament because there was, there is no organization that controls the figures of the public administrations. So they did that. They sent me these guys to control the opera for the first time since '73. So I thought it was a farewell gift. But what was good was everything was correct. And I left after the first lockdown, last June. And somebody of the parliament said, but you have been criticized because of the streaming system, but now nobody would criticize that anymore. Because, of course, when the lockdown started, we couldn't perform, but I had a collection of more than 300 tapes. Yeah. And so we could broadcast every night, everywhere, with 8 languages as subtitles, a different opera. And we could also play nice games when I had, for instance, on the plan, I tried to follow the plan, the original plan. So when we had, for instance, in the normal program, 3 times Tosca, I could send 3 times Tosca, but 1 time with Alanya, 1 time with Jonas Kaufmann, 1 time with Becciala. That was good. And I think that time many people all over the world, they were frustrated, and because they couldn't go out, and it was embarrassing. But finally, we could give for free a lot of operas to these people, and of course we had I can't remember the figures, but a huge number of people watching those broadcasts. In a way, it's also good because now in Vienna, there is an archive that is extremely rich because everything is documented in very good sound, very good picture qualities. And of course, now we'll do it at La Scala. Now we are, but it's going to be better. But because in the meantime there were some progresses in technology. Now we can have 4K cameras with HDR that allowed that you don't have to change the lights for these broadcasts. So I like it. And also, I appreciate the program of the Met, but it was also very different because the Met broadcasts in cinemas. Where are the cinemas? They are in cities where people have entertainment. I wanted to go everywhere, also in little towns, in the valley, in South America, in China, everywhere, because internet doesn't know the frontiers, the borders. So I thought that was nice, and also I had a different views. I'm not a great lover of too many close-ups and too many, because I do not like to see the tools of the singer or when she's in trouble or when it's too hard for her, and so I don't like to see that. I think it's pornography. I think there's an old rule in our businesses that you have to have some distance, and I think also on TV it's good. And also I do not like to, I see these things like an opera lover. And I do not like the duets, for instance, when you have the impression that you are flashing middle, talk, 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 talk. It's boring, and there is always a close up onto the singer that sings, and you don't see the reaction of the other one. Finally, we did also the first broadcast in 4K, and I can tell you, if you have a good stream, a good beamer in 4K, the miracle is that you don't need any cut anymore, because it gives to the people the freedom to watch what they want to watch and not what the director of the transmission is willing you to see. I think this is great because you feel like in the third row of very good theater, and you can see every detail. You have a global view, and inside of that global view, you can choose what you are watching.
I remember when you explained that to me when we first met, and I was fascinated by that concept, and I appreciate everything you just remarked on. You reminded me of something. I had the great fortune to work a lot with Leontine Price, and she was familiar with cameras, whether photographic cameras or television cameras. And she would always say to the cameraman or the photographer in French, "En distance, s'il vous plaît, en distance, back up." Because she understood how she would be perceived.
Sure. And so, also, you don't want to see Miss Netrebko sweating. So
no.
Honestly.
I have one last question. I appreciate your time, and as always with you, I learned a great deal. You arrived in Milan when it was Lombardy, the region it's in, was the epicenter of the pandemic in Europe. And great sacrifices were made all over the region, especially Bergamo, but really everywhere. And many of my loved ones were locked down. And it was a very difficult time that the people of Milan and the region got through with a lot of courage and tenacity. If you read Manzoni, I know you have the Promessi Sposi, he writes about an earlier plague in Milan, and this is part of the Milanese tradition. And yet, La Scala continued, and La Scala has created a wonderful season that we now in October are in the middle of. You're doing a lot of Rossini, which I think brings allegria, joy to people. But traditionally, La Scala opens its season, at least since the early 1950s, on the 7th of December with Sant'Ambrogio, the patron saint of Milan. And we don't have time unless you wanted to go through the whole season, but I know Riccardo Chailly will be conducting a new Davide Livermore production of Verdi's Macbeth. And throughout the season, you have Massenet and Bellini and Mozart and Strauss and more Verdi, a lot more Verdi and Cimarosa and Thomas Addis and Umberto Giordano. And my question is, because people can go to your website and see the season, planning that season in the middle of a pandemic, and what assumptions you had to make and what things you could not be certain of.
No, but you know, of course, this virus has attacked really our heart, because what are we doing? We are planning 3-4 years ahead, and suddenly you can know what you would do next month. So, and I thought it's an interesting situation. I don't speak about the real pandemic, because here many people died and it was tragedy. But as a job that you have to make, I thought it was interesting, and I thought we just have to find some solution. So this actual season, we did it 14 times. 14 times. Then you know, last year we knew about 3 weeks before the 7th of December that we couldn't do the opening night like it was planned. So I said to my guys, just try to find the 25 best singers in the world, and we'll do what we do. And I think we need to do something for television, but I wouldn't like to have a broadcast, because it's nonsense to make a concert that is broadcast, because all of these pieces that you want to present, they are concluded by a strong applaud. So at that time, no people in the hall, so it's a bit artificial. So I asked the stage director to imagine not a concert that is broadcast, but to imagine an event for the TV with a lot of technology, and then I noticed that La Scala is exactly what you said at the beginning, can be very fast, and they did it, and it was very good. And then I thought, you know, now it's not serious to plan ahead like we do normally. Just I cancel everything what we had on the plan for the 6 next months, and I will decide, because it's difficult to put something on and to cancel. I think it's a great problem. So I said, let's establish a rule. We will do every month 1 opera, 1 ballet, 2 concerts, and recite for broadcast. If it happens that we are allowed to have audience again, then we will, instead of 1 performance for TV, we'll do 3 or 4 performances for the audience. And so we did. And it was like a miracle, because of course I had no money to spend. So we made revivers. We did a new production anyway. I asked my friend Irina Brook, because she's very talented, she has good ideas. I said, would you like to do an opera without anything, just to a little bit in the reserve to see what you could find. And we did a very nice thing, was double bill, Brecht Weil, Arte Povera, no? Little Mahagoni Songspiel, and seven Dead Saints. So that I could find it.
Streller had famously historically done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I thought was good to do that, and concluded with this revival of Figaro. So, but then we thought for the autumn, of course, we have to bring the train back on the road. So I thought maybe it's going to be tricky in the autumn. So because we will keep this distance between players. And so let's do light operas. We start, as you say, with Rossini operas, because in a big pit, even with distance, you can put the whole orchestra together. I thought the second thing is that it would be wise not to have to be choruses. Again, Rossini, you can do it. Then we do Elisir d'Amore a bit later, and then La Callisto by Cavalli, which is absolutely new here, because there was never an opera by Cavalli at La Scala. This magnificent opera. So for the next season, we thought, no, we have to go back to normal activity. Of course, it was not completely easy, because we had to postpone a few productions that were planned last year, and also a part of the game, there is a part of our colleagues that was in deep trouble, the singers, because they had no job for so many months. So I thought we need also to find pieces that allowed to the canceled singers that they work. So we have constructed that season. But I'm happy because there is a great diversity. This is not always the same thing. There are new things. Of course, what we did also is that I said to my guys, even if we don't know what we will do next month, we for 22, 23, 24, we are completely free. So we have planned many years ahead now. And it was
Just
nice.
to mention one thing, Olga Borodina is the old countess in Peak Dom.
Yes.
It's worth traveling around the planet to see.
No, but you know, there is
great.
this tradition to have a great singer in that role. And you know, when I was in Vienna, I did it with Grace Bunbury.
Yes, I know. I saw.
She was magnificent.
I know.
At the end of the performance, I said, Grace, look, would you like to redo it like next year? And she said, oh, no, because my knees hurt me. So she didn't stop because of vocal problems,
No.
but because of the legs. So that's great.
I know many senior artists who say it's not the voice, it's the knee. Yeah, many. There's one very famous singer who's a friend of both of ours who has stopped doing Mozart for his knees, not because of his voice. Yeah. Dominique Meyer, I know I could talk to you for a very long time. You do inspire me, and I mean that. I've learned so much today and always in following your work, and you make me think about things in new ways, which I appreciate. And given the European aspect of this, I will say thank you, merci, danke, e grazie infinite.
I hope to see you soon here.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Ciao.